building of a lower apartment. Lieutenant Hauck is in studio right now. Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Okay, so what did happen? First of all, let's start right out with, so the dog attack. That is what you guys are saying. So when the door gets knocked open, the dog attacks.
What happened was we were there to execute a warrant for Madison County. They had an AK-47 type gun that was stolen in a burglary in Brookfield. So we went there. Our officers made entry. When they did, the dog came down the hallway at them, and they were forced to shoot it.
And then bullets go down through the floor. Is the city of police department contesting that bullets went down into the lower apartment, or
No.
that is the case?
No, yeah, absolutely is the case.
All right. So what was the bullet? So I had heard things where there's almost a bullet that sprays like birdshot would. Is that the case?
Understand first, I'm not a ballistic expert, but there's essentially three types of rounds that you have that can be used in a shotgun, which was the weapon that was used here. You have birdshot, which is...
so this is just what they call it, birdshot.
Birdshot, right. And it's, if you can imagine, very, very tiny little, like, BBs.
Yeah.
Very small.
It is exactly what it's called.
Exactly.
When you're shooting at a bird out high in the sky, far away,
Yep.
it's nice to have a spraying of birdshot.
It covers a larger area with a little bit less force behind it because it's a smaller but larger path, I guess.
Yeah.
Then there's buckshot, which is a similar sort of shot, just a little bit larger BBs. And then you have a slug, which is essentially a round metal slug at the end, and it's more of a force. It's more of conventional bullet type, much larger. This we used buckshot. So and the reason why we do that is a slug is a very powerful round, can go through walls and continue and keep going. So we only use that in an emergency sort of situation, a barricaded subject, something like that. So this was buckshot that was used.
Okay, so from the people downstairs, they're saying we had no idea this was coming. We have had people calling and say, couldn't you have tipped them off? Couldn't you have done? Obviously, that would destroy the element of surprise in this case.
Well, you have to remember, we have to go back to the beginning here. Why were we there to begin with?
Right.
This was an AK-47. It's a high-velocity round that can kill you very quickly and can go through shields and all sorts of things. So this is one of the more dangerous things that we do in law enforcement. Our officers, our SWAT team is unbelievably trained well. If you watch them in action, they're exceptional. So these aren't a bunch of guys kicking down doors, going in recklessly. They're very trained. We have a specific team dedicated to do this, so they know what they're doing.
And isn't it the bullet, though, that determines not as much the gun? There are bullets that could pierce, a bulletproof vest. Is it the bullet?
It's both.
It is both?
It's both, right. Okay. You can have ones that specific rounds that are designed for that.
Right.
But there's also guns, because by their sheer velocity, like an AK-47, can penetrate vests or even shields. So that's something you got to remember. That's what they're going into here. So understand it's real danger here. So we're not knocking on neighbors' doors because we have to keep in mind that we don't know who's connected to who.
Right.
And sometimes these homes.
Yeah.
And I don't believe that to be the case here, but many times we have operations where it's upstairs, downstairs, and we knock on one door, and next thing you know, we're getting shot at. So you have to be really careful. The element of surprise is unbelievably important in these situations.
Go ahead.
Well, I guess one of the questions that I have is, the AK-47 is obviously a very dangerous weapon, but this was stolen from, I'm assuming, a legal gun owner, if he's reporting it to the police, that his AK-47 was stolen. I'm questioning the urgency of having to kick in someone's door for a stolen gun. Was there some thought that the suspect was going to use it for some purpose? I'm not familiar with, and having worked in the newsroom for a long time, the door kick-ins for a stolen weapon.
Right. As far as the urgency, that's something probably would have to be directed at Madison County. Our role in this was to facilitate the warrant that was their warrant. So it wasn't our warrant.
Yeah.
We were asked to assist them in executing this no-knock search warrant that they obtained. So the evidence that they used, I can't speak to because I wasn't there. That was spoken in front of a judge. So that's something they decided, and the judge obviously endorsed it and said, yes, I agree with you. You have the right to do this.
So this just was not the police determining we're going to do a no-knock warrant.
No.
This came out of the...
Police can't decide that because search warrants are very unbelievably restrictive, as they should be. Everybody has the right to be secure in their home, and that's written in the Constitution. So search warrants are in lieu of that. That basically looks at and say, okay, why would the police need a no-knock search warrant to go in? Is there some sort of danger? Is there
Well, I
some
would think
sort
the
of
danger would
evidence?
have to be imminent in order to
Absolutely.
Because why not wait? And I'm not questioning because there's a lot of stuff we don't know.
Yeah.
But I guess I am questioning. Why not wait? Do some sort of an undercover stakeout. Wait for the person to come out and then take that person.
And the reality of it is many times that does happen. You just don't ever know about it.
Right.
It's done. It's the reason why we stop people in the street and take them into custody, and then we have a bunch of felony charges. That's because we look at it and we say, okay, well, there really wasn't any exigency here. We can wait them out. There's sometimes when you can't. I can't speak to their investigation because it wasn't our case. So
Yeah.
all I can tell you is we're facilitating that warrant. So anything that any evidence that they had that allowed a judge to look at it, endorse it, and then
So,
hand it to us, I can't speak to.
And I do have to ask though, if a judge issues a no-knock warrant, and you go to, wouldn't it be under police procedure that you go to a setting and you then have to judge the setting? Like anything else, you may make a modification based on the circumstance that you come upon. Could you have decided this is not a safe no-knock warrant? We need to take another approach, or because that judge ordered that, are you required to do a no-knock?
Not to get too much into police tactics,
Yeah.
but we do our best. Understand that were the police to come to say your house, we might not know the layout of your home.
Right.
So we're going to do the best we can with what we know and our experience. So without getting too much into how we do these things.
Well, but at this point, there are people, there's an apartment downstairs.
it's a two-family.
It's a two-family. So if
Yeah.
somebody else is, could you have come to that apartment building and deemed it not safe to be able, based on the potential for innocent people? What if there were children downstairs?
Like if the kids were
I mean,
playing in the front yard,
Right.
do you still proceed as
No. So
you could modify. So you could modify based on the setting.
I'm not saying that would necessarily totally eliminate, say, a no-knock search warrant,
Yeah.
Right.
but they would probably make very quick decisions
Adjustments,
right
yeah.
there and maybe remove the children, that sort of
Right.
thing. I mean, like I said, we're not going in here guns a-blazing. It's
Right,
very
right,
thought
right.
out, this process.
Right.
Unfortunately, because of the dangers that you face with these warrants and these, the guns and all these other sorts of things, in this situation, a very dangerous gun, they have to use force to protect themselves sometimes. And unfortunately, this was a situation where a couple of BBs went down through the floor and
Right.
into the first floor apartment.
And it was, you see the pictures, I saw the pictures from WKTV. The plaster, you can see where it came through, and it's probably the size of, 4 or 5 inch circle there that goes up to where the plaster had come down. So whether that's one or a couple of BBs, but the woman certainly distraught. She's very
Oh,
upset.
sure, absolutely, and I'm
She-
sure,
she could
it
have
was
been hit.
difficult for her. Right,
Yeah.
absolutely, and I'm not trying to diminish that at all. I'm just saying that if you take kind of the emotional aspect out of it, for us anyway, just to analyze it, because we analyze every use of force that we do, no matter what it is, whether it's from the most minor, somebody resisting arrest without hitting an officer, just kind of pulling away, to deadly physical force. We totally evaluate every single situation to make sure that, was it done right? Could we have done it better? All this, it's done every single time. So,
Could you have done this one better?
oh, I don't know. The
at
investigation's
this
still
point.
got to go through.
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes time. These
Yeah.
things don't happen overnight. So that's something that will be looked at, and they'll decide, okay, could we have done something a little bit different or a little bit better? The only thing I can say to you is, without having been there and been involved in that aspect of it, you've got a dog charging at you. You don't have many choices.
No, I don't think that. At that point you do.
Right.
Right.
No.
And
No.
a lot of times these dogs are trained to. They're trained to attack. Right? And I had said police officers, and they challenged me on that. And really, it's probably anyone who would break in there or come into that house. They're trained to attack, whether it's a police officer or just somebody else.
Yeah, and the hard part is I know some people say, well, if you came into, I don't commit any crimes. If you came into my house, my dog would too, and I understand that, and my dog would do exactly the same thing. The only thing I can say is I'm not committing crimes in my home, so
Right.
unfortunately, and nobody wants to kill a dog. Most of the police officers are animal lovers, and nobody feels good about it.
Yeah.
But people shouldn't be using their dogs as
And I'm
tools
assuming
for crime.
for some people the dog is the issue, but most of the story is about the people downstairs. That's
Right.
the
Yeah, it's
story.
both. It is. It's
Yeah.
both. Absolutely.
You have to do what you have to do. Obviously, if the officers have to protect themselves.
Sure.
I don't think anybody would question it.
It
Hold tight, we'll
basically
come right
creates
back.
a mini explosion, and then this tears off, and then in here is just a bunch of metal BBs.
Okay.
Okay, this is a slug. You see the difference?
And that's the slug right
That's
there,
a
right?
metal slug. It's a very large round. So we will use those, but only in situations of, like, say a barricaded subject where we might have to shoot through a wall or shoot through a door or something like that.
Yeah.
Through a vehicle, something like that. Really drastic sort of stuff. And like I said, this is a round that we use in our patrol rifles, which is essentially a 22 rifle round. Versus say an AK-47, which is a much larger round, much more velocity. That's that's obviously a handgun round.
Right.
That's a 45 round.
Give us a call to see if we can be of assistance to you and your family.
What peels off? Just this right here?
Anything brass. So what happens is when the primer hits, this hits the round. There's gunpowder back here, explodes, and anything brass here comes out. You see this line? Mm-hmm. That's where the actual round ends. So this brass part all comes out, or the slug part, which has got the brass color in the. So that's basically how it works.
We have Lieutenant Steve Hauck in studio. We're talking about the ammunition, firearms. You know that by using the AK-47, talking about the dangers of the weapon, it is going to mean that I'm going to hear from a lot of people in the gun world. Gun advocates really have a tough time with using, the assault. The phrase assault rifle is always a key, key term.
Right. Where I think
what is really an assault rifle?
Where I think we get into a debate is what we might categorize an assault rifle, they look at as a sporting rifle.
Correct,
We have to remember that there's an actual definition by the penal law that was created during the SAFE Act.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we look at when we go to enforce laws. That's what we look at. That's what's important to us. So that's where we run into issues, and we've talked about this many times when the SAFE Act came up. And people have to understand that we don't create laws, we don't legislate, it's our job to enforce them, and that's it.
That's what they call it. All right.
That's it.
Joe on the line concerning firearms. Go ahead. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. Just a couple comments here. First of all, the comment on the buckshot. BBs are a specific size of diameter. And a buckshot, typically, depending on whether it's aught or double aught, is 30 caliber or larger. And actually, those pellets individually have as much energy as the popular .380 pistol. So you're putting quite a bit of spray out in there, and that's why they call them street sweepers and stuff, and they have their purpose. So they're definitely a potent weapon.
Yeah.
And the comment on the AK-47, it's a class felony to have that weapon. First of all, it was stolen, so that's a federal offense. But
Sure.
The fact that New York State made him a felony, and that's just the way it is.
Right,
However,
right.
the potency of an AK-47, it's a 7.62 by 39 millimeter round. Your dad made guns in Remington Arms that were far more powerful than that. The 30-06 is a 7.62, and I believe it's by a 62 millimeter case, as well as the popular NATO round, which we refer as the 308 Winchester, was a 7.62 by 59.
By the way, if I could just interrupt for a second, Joe. This is Thanksgiving dinner for me, just so you know. All right.
I'm writing all this down, so.
Joe knows what he's talking about.
Joe knows what he's talking about, and I hear this from my father as well. And whenever this topic comes up, listen, I was brought up in a Remington Arms family. I am a huge supporter of gun rights, and the problem that we have is we do have this assault rifle push that is started not just with the governor but also with 9/11, and it really. While it might be confusing for me and for the rest of us, even though I was brought up in it, Joe brings up a pretty valid point that I've heard many, many times.
Yeah, and I have to agree on at least if it's a real AK-47, which maybe it is, and I don't believe it's a fully automatic. It's a semi-automatic gun, but it is a class E felony, I believe, now in New York State. So
Do we know, Lieutenant, if it was? I mean, I'm assuming it was a semi-automatic and not a fully automatic weapon.
It was.
Yeah,
It was.
Yeah. So that would be legally. Is that prior to the SAFE Act? That would be legal, right? That would have been legal in New York.
That would have been legal in New York, depending. Remember, we had the Bill Clinton thing where you had to modify the AK-47 so they couldn't take a suppressor or ban that or have that stock everybody likes. But after that, after the sunset of that, they became legal again.
Yeah.
Other than in New York State, I don't believe you could have more than a 10-round clip.
Got it. All right, Joe. We appreciate it. I appreciate the reminiscing with me and my dad right here. So.
Yeah, there you go. Just more information for next Thanksgiving.
Good stuff. I'm going to come in loaded. All right, Joe. Thank you. You see the point. I mean, it's a big deal for gun enthusiasts. We live in a world where if they pass laws against smoking, if I don't smoke, I don't care. I don't care about your rights to smoke. I don't care about any of it. And the same thing comes true with guns. If you're not a gun enthusiast, people ask questions like, "What do you need that gun for?"
But you have to understand this.
Who would need that? Who would need that weapon?
This is not a SAFE Act issue. This is not a particular gun issue.
This is a stolen
This is the
weapon.
fact that it was a stolen weapon.
Yeah.
It wouldn't matter what kind of stolen gun it was.
Right.
But I'll ask you that again, though. You say it wouldn't matter what kind of stolen gun it was. I just haven't heard of search warrant, and I know it's not like you authorized it or Utica Police authorized this search warrant, but kicking in a door for a stolen gun. I mean, there are thousands of stolen guns, I would imagine, in the city of Utica.
Well, in all fairness, you haven't heard it, but it's done regularly, commonly across the country. So
Okay.
it's a regular sort of thing. It's not.
That wouldn't necessarily. I'm not trying to be that wouldn't necessarily make it right. Even if it's common, it wouldn't make it right. And I think the question that a lot of people are going to be looking for is when the investigation is done. The answer they're going to be looking for. So the investigation was done. We may find out more details why there was a no-knock warrant and why that was important.
Sure.
At this point, we don't know, right? I mean, we don't
Right.
know until that investigation.
Yeah, that's something.
Until
that-
the information is released.
Right, and what we're going to look at for our purposes is the actual warrant itself, warrant execution itself. So
Yeah.
anything as far as Madison County's case, that's again
Right.
going to have to go.
It'll be
back.
interesting if the details do come out as to why it was it was felt that there was an imminent danger that needed a no-knock. Andrew.
Well, and Jeff, and I know what you're saying, but also too, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lieutenant Hauck, but search warrants are executed probably every day, sometimes multiple times a day, depending. So the only reason we really knew about this one was because of the incident that occurred. So, you may say, well, why would you have a no-knock search warrant for a stolen weapon? But they could be executed for anything, right?
Well, not necessarily anything, but it has to do with if there's a danger to the officers or possibly a danger of evidence being destroyed.
Yeah.
So that's why you see them in drug cases, where all of a sudden it's like, geez,
Okay.
why'd they have to kick a door down and go get drugs? Well, because drugs are easily destroyed.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
guns aren't easily destroyed, but guns are easily fired. So
And we've always talked about this, that that we have to ask these questions.
Oh, absolutely.
And I tend to lean on I'm not a big fan of the no-knock. I just, as a person that, and I understand. You guys get these situations, there's dangers.
I can tell you right
And-
now that without a no-knock search warrant option, and again, it's used a lot less often than regular search warrants
Right.
are executed. Without that option, you'd have an awful lot of guns and drugs running around because officers aren't going to sit outside and wait out for
Right.
3 days for somebody that might walk by because warrants are there's a shelf life on them. They don't
Sure.
go continuously. They're X amount of period of time and they're set forth, and you have to execute in that period of time, or else you don't execute it.
And if somebody stole a gun, there's a reason why they stole the gun. right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And in this
that plays
case,
a
it
role,
looks
but-
it looks like it was stolen.
It will be
permanently, so.
interesting to see what the details coming out of
Oh,
the
sure.
thing as we move on. So, all right. Anything else on
One
this?
more thing on the bullets. You were explaining that the bullets used yesterday, or when this happened, was like a buckshot.
Right.
Which the suggestion is it's kind of a lesser bullet. In other words, you have more powerful options.
We do.
But if the AK-47 is such a powerful and dangerous gun, which I agree that it is, why go with the lesser option for the bullets?
Because our job is to not go in and obliterate everything. Our job is to use the least amount of force necessary to protect ourselves and to stop the problem. So our officers, again, are well trained. And remember, it's not just one officer making an entry. There's multiple officers here with all varying rounds of types of guns and ammunition. So the least one we could use in this situation was the shotgun. So there are other options that were there. Just to unfortunately have to stop the dog, we used the least
Yeah.
one that we could. So.
And if you listen to what Joe had said, is there are plenty of sporting weapons that are far more powerful than that not fully automatic AK-47.
Listen, any gun can killing
Killing the
the buggy.
little
Absolutely.
those
So
little
it's
things they put
it's
in the purse.
yeah, and again, I've told you before, we're not going to argue the Safe Act because what we're told to enforce, we enforce. So we're not for or against it. It is what it is.
Lieutenant Steve Hauck, as always, I appreciate you coming in and sitting in this day in the hot seat. So
Absolutely.
Not every
Thank
day
you.
is the hot seat, but today
that's okay.
Kind of a little hot seat. 8:52. We'll come right back.